call the April 19th, 2017 Ross Valley Sanitary District Board meeting to order. Mary, will you do a roll call for us?
Gaffney?
Here.
Borstein? Meggs? Here. Kelly?
Here.
Philip?
Here. All right, item number 2, adjourn to closed session. Call us into open session for the April 19th meeting of the Ross Valley Sanitary District Board of Directors. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Reporting out from closed session, we've reviewed 2 government tort claims acts that we received, and we rejected both. They're available for review by the public. They're from 2 former employees of the district, Danielle McPherson and Jackie. And moving on to approval of the agenda, does anybody have any comments or changes to
I'd
it?
like to move item 9, which is these children, up to follow item 6.
Okay. Great, 9 up to just below open session. Is everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Yeah. Does any member of the public have any comment on the agenda or its order? All right, then with that amendment, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
I move approval of the agenda without amendment.
Second. Thank you. Gaffney, Meggs, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Item number 6, open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agendas. Do we have any members of the public who would like to raise items? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 9, reorganized as item number, the next item. Discussion and direction on review of draft agreement term sheet between RVSD and the Larkspur Creekside Homeowners Association. Greg, do you want to introduce this for us?
Sure, I'll do a quick introduction, and we have 3, I want to say members of the public, but representatives of the Larkspur Creekside HOA, so that should be very helpful for this evening. So the board last had this item in front of you back in June of last year, and that was really the opening discussion regarding the request from the Creekside HOA for the district to consider a proposal whereby the currently private wastewater sewer infrastructure for that neighborhood will be replaced and upgraded at the expense of the HOA. And when that work was finished, the infrastructure would be transferred to the district for public ownership and operations and maintenance responsibilities. And the history and details are in that prior staff report. I won't try to recap those, but the basic sort of physical layout is still of note. This is essentially a 70-home subdivision, not too far down the road from where we are. At the time that it was built in the early 80s, the decision was made between the then responsible agency for wastewater locally, which was Larkspur, and the developer, I assume in some sense, to have the sewer system be maintained as a private ownership of the HOA. It's had many years of problems since then, so that's really the underlying driver to all of this. At that June meeting last year, the board did provide direction to go ahead with the proposed set of actions at the time. Those are the actions 1 through 5 listed on the staff report. They're pretty straightforward. The idea was we would send a formal letter to the HOA to begin the process and outline some of the basic terms and conditions. We would then complete a condition assessment to independently verify the overall status of the system. We would then enter into discussions to develop what we call a term sheet, which would essentially is like an outline of the key elements for an eventual contract. The HOA would take steps to demonstrate the financial planning and resources to execute the project. And with those steps completed, we would then come back to each of the respective boards with an opportunity to say, okay, with all of this done, do you want to take the next step, which is to move towards the development of a fully executable draft agreement, which would then move this whole thing forward. And that's where we are this evening. The staff and the HOA representatives have had a series of meetings on the draft term sheet. Legal counsel's been involved in that review and development as well. You have that term sheet as attachment A to your staff report. And what staff is looking for this evening would be, after board consideration, would be direction to work with, have district legal counsel work with legal counsel from the HOA to take these terms and conditions and again draft them into a complete executable agreement that would then come back to both parties for consideration. If those steps were successfully completed, then the HOA would be in the position to go ahead and complete design, issue a construction contract, complete the work, etc., and the process would then move forward. So again, what's before you this evening is just the step of, here are the terms and conditions. Do you see any changes you want to entertain or concerns or questions? And with those things taken into account, is it the board's, will it be the board's direction to go forward with drafting the complete agreement? So that's what's before you this evening. With that, I'll hand it back to the board, and we've got Rick and others from the HOA and staff to answer any questions.
Board, any questions? Tom, you want to say anything?
Well, this is a group of homeowners that somehow are in our district, but we don't maintain their sewers. And we pay a full sewer service charge. And it kind of slipped through because Larkspur did things differently than the district did, I guess. And so they're hoping to be able to replace sewers, which basically is our job too. We wasn't earlier. So of course, I met with your board one time, and I think that they're doing something that would really help. I know you've got a lot of I&I there, probably salt water. And so we're trying to get the salt water out of our sewer for reclaimed water projects that treatment plant's doing. So.
And that comes into our collection system.
And it comes into our collection system, yeah. And then we send it to Central Marin. So it looks pretty complete to me. I went over it very carefully. I am glad that we put in here that we would, do what we could for grants and loans on the upper laterals. Right. Because I think that's, at least we can contribute something on that. And, that's how I feel. I think it's a program that, is something you should support.
I support all of that. I agree with all of that. And it's a shame that it was done that way in Larkspur in the first place, but my only comment on that is I'm happy to join you in suggesting that we do all that we can on the upper laterals, but they're only placed in 1980. Do you guys think there's any problems with the laterals?
I think the intent will be to analyze the existing conditions, and if there's a problem, notify those particular owners and let them know of the advantages of taking the advantage while
We have a lateral issue on site.
Yeah, and say, look,
meeting.
put them on notice, so to speak.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
but see, the whole sewer system was built in 1980.
And it's all not that great.
It's on
Yeah, it's
Bay
all-
Line.
Okay, good point.
It's all bad.
Were the materials a lot different in 1980? I think we're just showing our age, that we don't think 1980 was that long ago.
So we did the condition assessment. We looked at about half of the laterals. We didn't look at all of them. And we looked at them through access from the mains. And I think, John, you could actually, he's not here for that purpose, but John could comment on that. So the majority of the ones that we inspected had virtually none of them would pass today's standards, either between substandard materials, material defects, they have, in many cases, they had an excessive number of angles and bends for whatever reason, the way they were constructed. So we don't think the majority, if any, of the current laterals would be 100% compliant with current Ross Valley standards.
Okay. And you'll encourage?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, we're
Well,
going
because we're going to be repaving, it's going to be one of our,
Yeah.
door knob.
Repavement to North Marin?
No, but we're
No.
now going to be repaving to do the whole system, so
Right,
they have
but
an
that
opportunity
is-
to do the door hangers.
Will
and-
there then be in San Antonio, they have a pavement moratorium, which is, you can't dig up that road unless you pay significantly.
Well, some of the roads are private,
Mhm.
so those roads, you know.
You can't do it.
Right. We're only crossing city streets at intersections. So really, it doesn't come into play that way.
Okay.
But I can assure you that with Greg and staff's help, we've come up with a number of different incentives to encourage people to do it now while we have men and equipment there versus waiting till they either sell a house or
Renovate.
renovate. So, yeah, I think we'll convince, there'll always be a few that, for whatever reasons, we can't convince, but, I think we'll certainly get their
Okay.
attention.
They can probably take advantage of economy of scale.
Yeah,
As well.
that's right.
If you got somebody in there to whip out 70 laterals, they'd get a heck of a deal.
That's right, that's right. We anticipate that very much so.
And it'd be the same contractor probably. doing it.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, you'd want to, I would encourage you to speak to the contractor and suggest they really can make a nice amount of money, but they've got to give up some too.
Right.
The upper laterals are relatively short.
Okay, that's good.
These homes are not that far from the street.
You might do well to try and find out how many people want it, so the contractor knows, gee, there's going to be 48 or whatever.
Yeah, the homeowners association is a perfect group to collaborate, to coordinate that. Pam, did you have a question?
I just saw on the term sheet, it says one of the responsibilities, HOA and the city of Larkspur will be responsible for maintenance of pavement, roads, transfer, and infrastructure located under their respective streets. That sort of covers it?
Because they're privately owned streets, they're not Larkspur's town-owned streets,
Right,
except where they cross.
There's one street that goes through.
Okay, so it's in the term.
Yeah.
Great.
Just because
So I
Yeah,
think it's a,
but that's the downside to it, because if it was a public owned street, you could put a pavement moratorium and make it very clear that they're not going to be changing their laterals for the next 5 years without substantial payment. If you have to rip up the street during a pavement moratorium, you're in 20 grand.
The only line that goes through the intersection is the main line, so there wouldn't be any percent for that individual. intersection.
Okay.
that looks like great help.
All right, any other public comment? Do you have anything you want to say?
Well, we're just anxious to get your vote of approval so that we can move forward with our engineers that are already in line, ready to start.
I would like to say thank you to Greg and Kathy. And to Tom for the time that they've spent. I really, as a citizen, as I said to Greg last meeting, that my sense of trust in a government agency was greatly enhanced by your efforts. And I
You're
just wanted
paying
to
for
say
it.
that.
It's a great staff, it's a great staff.
Yeah, it is.
Dinner is at,
I think we should be most grateful for Tom for moving this up on the agenda.
Let's try to great. Anything else?
Well, I'd like to move.
Is it-
I don't think we need to, it's just a
Well, we're supposed to, would like us to advise staff to continue to proceed along these lines.
Yep.
Great. You don't need a vote.
No, we have direction. We'll go ahead and draft the agreement, which will come back.
Reflect all this.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful, thank you,
so
and thank you for the kind comments. We know we have a great staff. It's really to hear it too.
thank you.
Okay, thanks, you guys.
All right, and now we'll go back
No.
to standing committee.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
Standing committee report out, finance committee, Tom, report on the finance committee. Good to see you.
Okay, so we held the finance committee meeting on, Mary, Sarah, and I on Monday, and we went over 8D, the compensation policy, which is a consent item. We reviewed the private lateral program and informational, which is item 12. And we currently responding to the state audit. And we also took a look at the monthly capital program report. And that's something we all want to start looking at. It's kind of a summary of all of our capital projects. I think it's kind of a good way to go. And we looked at our monthly legal services which are inclining upward a little bit. So anything else?
Well, we also, I mean, it was not, by an error of omission, the monthly financials were not on this agenda, but we did. At least one point we wanted to make to the board was that we're,
That's right.
staff is proposing a change and we're accepting it, that if you look at 8B, tonight's packet, 2 of 7 and 4 of 7, those pages are very similar in that one is month to date and one is year to date, and staff is proposing that we do away with seeing month to date because everything in month to date is also reflected in year to date. And then they're responsible for these variances month by month, which really, given the way our budget works, it makes more sense to tell us about variances, you know, sort of cumulatively. So it'll be simpler. I think it'll be easier for somebody like me to understand and not a real finance, you know, whiz, and everything will still be provided information-wise. Is that right?
Perfect.
Sometimes the person who doesn't understand is able to explain it very simply. Yeah, and if anybody has any comments or questions about that?
Well, it's also, if I can jump ahead onto the human resources meeting, it's the same issue. So I did say, and you know, it's a little controversial, but the regional market comparison benchmarks, I think I spoke either as a private person at the financial meeting, or I spoke on my own behalf at the human resource meeting. I really think that next year we really need to look at, when we're renegotiating with the unions, and I know they don't like this, but the public is entitled to know some sort of comparisons in the private sector as well. Whether we put it into our agreement or MOA is one thing, but the public asks, and you know, when you don't have an answer, you know, I've had people ask me that, and I think that there are certain jobs that do comport equally to private sector, and to never ever look at them and compare them and talk about them is not appropriate in public agency. I just don't think so. And I know that doesn't make me very popular with certain groups, but that's what I get asked by people, and I've been asked by people on that in other positions, and it's only appropriate that on occasion you look at the private sector compensation.
And so that's pertaining to the compensation policy?
Correct.
That you reviewed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious if that does industry standards typically exclude private analogs for job classifications?
In my experience, yeah, in which generally your public agency salary surveys are looking at comparable public agencies. So yeah, I mean, your points are well taken, and they're easy to understand in the sense of the objective, but
It's not.
there's a lot of devil in the detail type
That's right.
challenges there. But Mary, to answer your question, in my experience, you're going public agency to public agency.
Right, because there's an argument that could be apples and oranges on the other hand.
It's complicated for a number of reasons.
It is complicated for a number of reasons, and no, I would not, and I'm not suggesting this at this time, I'm suggesting this for a future time, maybe perhaps next year. But the issue is, sure, it's apples and oranges, but sometimes you need to compare what fruits are in the market and what you want to buy, and nobody's saying that, but when you're only comparing public to public, you're in a little bit of an echo chamber. And, you know, the public ratepayer has asked these questions of me, and, you know, they're entitled to some answers.
When you think it actually, I mean, I don't know what kind of analogous jobs there are, but there would be a possibility that our rate would be lower because of the retirement benefits, although as the retirement benefits are shifting, right?
That would be one of those details.
Now where the benefits package gets factored in, okay. Was that a segue to the human
It
resources
was,
report? Okay,
yes.
great. Are you okay with that, Tom, that we segue, or did you want to say?
Oh,
something
that's
about-
fine, no.
Okay.
And the only other thing, because the two committees overlapped a little bit this time.
Yeah.
And one of the, to me, pretty exciting things for having been here for 3 years and a lot of controversy regarding how we were doing our HR is that we had always hoped that after we finished with the reorganization and things settled down and everybody got their feet wet in their new positions, that we would actually end up spending less and less on human resources. So I just want to point out that this is the first time I've seen it that we spent so far year-to-date, if nothing else changes, that we've spent 69.8% of our budget through 75% of the fiscal year.
I agree.
And that's pretty exciting. And as Mr. Richard, what's his name, who writes for the IJ?
Sponsor.
Halstead.
Halstead. What's the matter with you guys? You're so boring these days. So kudos to staff for asking that.
So, as a human resources, the district compensation policy I spoke about, the response to state audit, the general manager, Greg Norby, spoke about that, and, you know, I think that the responses to the state audit have been phenomenal. We're down to just a few little minor details, and you're prepared to essentially tell them in short order that we have responded and addressed each of the issues the state audit brought to our attention, and that you believe that they will accept that.
Yes, and we have one, to our somewhat frustration, we've done one very minor item in the back and forth, and we'll be bringing this a little bit ahead of ourselves, but that is all correct, and we are anticipating one very minor tweak to our travel and expense reimbursement policy, if you can believe it. But we'll bring that back. We expect to bring that on consent calendar next month. And with that minor change, that is the last item, and not to leave you in suspense. It was something we just missed. Something you may recall, for whatever reason, they hone in on different things. And they recommended we not have gym fees, like when you're on the road for travel. We have a list of reimbursable expenses, and the old version had, exercise equipment or whatever, exercise facility charges, and they said they would like that removed. We did remove it in other areas of our policies and conditions of employment, and we replaced it with what we call a wellness program that has a dollar amount for various wellness activities, and this one just somehow slipped through, so we'll be tweaking that, and that is pretty much the last item. And just as a final detail, the correspondence we've had so far in the last couple of days indicates that the process of getting the essentially the all clear, you're done communication is relatively straightforward. That will occur at the staff level. So our expectation is that after the May board meeting, when we make that small tweak to the travel and expense reimbursement, we would then have, I'm thinking more than the order of weeks after that, they do an update to the state website that tracks the status of the audit responses. And in some fashion, that will have an indication that RVSD is, quote, done. And that will be our point where, to the extent if the board's interested in sharing that status or whatever, you'll be able to do so with, clear status from the state of California. We won't have any. We're not waiting for some big official letter from the state auditor saying, congratulations, you're done. It'll be something fairly simple on the state website, but once we see it, we'll know we're basically clear to say that to people with full confidence that that's the case.
And then we just have a press release also.
We can do it right here.
There you go.
And that's
And I don't know whether this is exactly because of, but because of all the great things that the district has been doing, we're applying for a CASA award,
Right.
that you mentioned, and hopefully we'll get that.
You good? Apply.
All right, CMSA, is there a CMSA report this month?
Yeah, there is. CMSA is working very hard on things like resource recovery, biofuels, and generating electricity, to try to double their electrical generation capacity. They're negotiating with PG&E and Marin Energy. They've also got their truck delivery, so recycled water that our trucks carry to fill our trucks. And then in the morning, our trucks can fill up and then go out, and when they flush, they can use the water, the recycled water from the plant. The facility's been completed for, I don't know, some time. And not one truck has used it so far.
And Sanitary's about to.
Sanitary staff has qualified, and our staff, they've got to go through a little training, 4-hour, couple-hour training. And our staff is signed up for April 21, right?
That's right.
Yes.
So if we do that, then on April 22, I'd like you to...
Yes, it's a race, it's like the race to one.
Bill, that's right.
Fill one truck up.
Yeah, we didn't really have too much, there was a lot of information items.
Yes.
We won 9 CWEA awards at the treatment plant for various things, including the public information program.
That's right.
And I think that's pretty important. We'd like to, they've got a program with a lot of agencies, Nevada and Los Colinas.
And some personal awards on some of their employees, so.
Yeah,
very much so.
that's what I was talking about. And that's about it. It was mostly the information company.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item number 8, the consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they want to pull from the consent calendar?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Do I hear you making a noise, Tom?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
All right,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We've already accomplished item number 9.
I'm sorry, who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, Doug, and second. Thank you.
Item number 10, consideration of authorizing the general manager to execute amendment number 2 of the consultant services agreement with Waterworks for pump station 12 and 13. Greg.
Okay, just a quick overview on this one. So pump station 12 and 13, that capital project is out for bidding right now. On a quick positive note, we have a tremendous amount of interest in it. There's a mandatory, we call a pre-bid site walk for the project, and I think we have north of 10.
11 generals.
We have 11 generals signed up, so that's phenomenal. I mean, certainly in the case we're going to have a lot of interest and hopefully some very competitive bids. It's a substantial project for the district. It's the complete overhaul of both of those pump stations. So what this item deals with is in the run-up to putting those documents out for bid, after we had the construction management team on board, the decision was made that it would be valuable to do what we kind of loosely refer to as a constructability review. And this is where you're looking at the final design documents and you're sort of looking at them through the eyes of the contractor as the intent and saying, could I build that in a way or get the same result, or what kind of, sort of the last minute, it's not really a value engineering, that's a slightly different focus, but it looks for ways to build the project a little bit easier, a little bit, or make any final adjustments to it for construction. That process did prove to be relatively valuable. There were some notable changes to the final engineering bid documents that were identified by that group. And so the Waterworks engineering design team then needed to take that feedback from the constructability review and go back into the already essentially complete design documents and make those changes. So, and then we put the project out to bid. So this change order is dealing with their time and cost to make those redesigns from the constructability review. Otherwise, that contract work overall is very much on a very good track. Waterworks will continue to work with us on a services during construction capacity, reviewing submittals and so forth. But that is the basis for the change, and then we've got Catherine Hayden here to answer any questions.
So if you hadn't done this constructability process, would this probably just come to us in change orders during the construction? I mean, is it?
Could have, and some of them were, a lot of it was related to electrical components, and that's something you want to get right up front because you order it, and it's a really long lead time. So it could have been problematic for it to happen during the construction process, which is why we wanted to do it in advance.
Glad you brought it now. I'm glad you brought it now.
But the project's up 198, 798, right? Is that right? Original, yes?
For design? Or is that?
Yep. So originally, we authorized April 22nd, 2015, which is before I was on board, 814,751. We're now at $1,013,549, which is, just shy of $200,000. And why has that gone up 200?
Well, amendment number one is the lion's share of that change. And going back a little bit in history, there was a number of major issues that went into the amendment number one. Doug, one of the significant ones that was a big chunk of that cost was in the early stages of design, there was the team noted that there might be an opportunity to actually eliminate pump station 12 entirely, and essentially, so pump station 12 is the one by the Chevron station right there, and replace that with a gravity feed that would go all the way over to pump station 13 at the essentially kitty corner to 12 at the other end of the property. So we realized that was sort of an at-risk investor, thing to look at, but we did take the time and ask them to do some substantial investigations on that. It ultimately, Bon Air Shopping Center, which is essentially where we would have had to make that gravity bypass occur, wasn't interested in seeing a project of that magnitude come through their property in so many words. So I know that's one element, but really there's some more detail to it. Between the two of those amendments, that obviously is the basis for the cost difference. It retrofits, I will say this, and I sat in two of the review workshops at the 90% and I think the 50%. Retrofits by their nature tend to end up involving more uncertainty. You end up finding things, you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, now what do we want to do with that? So, and these two projects, or these two pump stations, I would say, we've also put a lot of time and effort into coming up with arrangements and features at these two pump stations that we want to replicate at the other pump stations as they go into their typical upgrade cycle. And I think from my observations, what we ended up doing there was, let me put it this way, we ended up making iterative changes at each stage that the design team had to then go back and take into account and update the drawings. Now, a good example would be like what we'll call bypass pumping features. Those pump stations didn't have really any significant bypass capability. This project is going to install very robust bypass capability in both cases. The initial concepts and layouts for those bypass pumpings looked pretty good at the 50%. By the time we got to the 90, the collective input of the team had already shifted a little bit, and there was additional changes asked of the design team to make those changes. So I think you're looking at a combination of primarily the cost to investigate the gravity bypass option, which if it had been successful would have been a real cost savings in the long run, and what I would call sort of the iterative nature of the retrofit project, where you...
Well, that I understand. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. As a percentage of construction and so forth, we do try to gauge those types of metrics, and the staff report has a mention of that. When we roll all this up at this point, we're looking at design and engineering services during construction at just over 15% of the construction cost, which is actually at the, for what it's worth, it's at the low end of the range for these types of mechanical electrical projects. Yeah. So we prefer to not see any amendments, of course, but these, in the context of the project, we think are pretty reasonable.
Yes.
I was wondering if the design engineer should have caught a lot of things that Cavello caught.
Well, they're the ones I can think of, and Catherine can speak more to this. The reality is that there's so many. There's no one set of rules for how these sewer lift stations are done. There are practices and there are a lot of standard features, but when you get down to things like electrical, do you want to provide some examples of that?
Well, it's like a bypass switch. You don't need it, everybody doesn't have it, but it's a way to reroute the electrical around and just run the pumps directly. That wasn't on our variable frequency drives. And it's not standard, but it's a good practice. So that's the kind of thing that was a recommendation that will be protected in the district as an extra feature.
The picture just became more clear and in focus as the actual drawings came to you.
Well, partly too, and again, I think actually that's a really good example. There are other districts, and this is a little bit of a technical issue, but you know, these pump stations are going to be retrofitted with modern variable frequency drives. That's kind of the power source to the pumps. And in many installations, you do not design a way to bypass, in a sense, the variable frequency drive. That's considered sort of a belt and suspenders and above. So the engineering design team had what they thought in that case was a very reasonable and standard electrical setup. And the design team, I'll say collectively, meaning the staff, a lot of this is staff input, you know, came back relatively late and said, boy, you know, the more we think about it, and we had some problems with pump station 14 right over here, where we did end up wanting to bypass the faulty variable speed drive facility. We said, no, we actually want you to re-engineer the electrical and provide an ability to completely bypass the VFD units. That was not a standard feature, and there are plenty of pump stations, you know, with around the wastewater utility world that don't have that feature. So these were, you know, I would definitely say that these were sort of discretionary decisions that the design team collectively was providing to Waterworks. I would definitely not characterize them as things that they missed and should have done differently. I think that would be a different conversation. So.
But Cavello, I don't think it was a design engineering firm.
They're not. So they contracted or had a sub-consultant feature engineering, I think it is. So they had an electrical engineering person support their constructability.
It was probably a smart idea or a technical item like a pump station to take a second look at it. And so it cost us $100,000. It's a lot, but probably.
All right, any more questions from the board? Any comment? Any comment from the public? Seeing none?
I move that we authorize the general manager, upon review and approval of council, to execute amendment number 2, the consultant services agreement with Waterworks Engineers, LLC, for the PS12 Bon Air and PS13 Green Brick pump station rehabilitation projects for an additional $68,539.
Second.
Thank you, Christine Kelly. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 11, consideration of authorizing staff to issue a notice inviting bids and file notice of exemption for construction of the fiscal year 2016-17 gravity sewer rehabilitation project, and issue a request for proposals for construction management services for the 2016-17 gravity sewer rehabilitation and improvement projects. It's a long title. It's two things. It's two things at least.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Catherine or Greg.
Catherine, you have to go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it on this.
Sure. So this project, we had design engineers, Harrison Associates, do 2 years of gravity sewer design. This is the second of those, the third cycle of our annual gravity sewer work. The project that is ready to go out for bid right now is the rehabilitation portion of that work. So we took the capacity work, that's going to be the second part of the second bid package for the improvement work. So it's been in design, we're looking at rehabilitating just under 8.5 miles of sewer. Most of it's going to be lining, combined open cut pipe bursting, a little bit of specialty construction methods. So it's a lot of improvements. We're looking tonight we're ready to go out to bid for the rehabilitation. We'll be coming back to you for the environmental actions and bidding on the improvement portions, which include capacity work on Butterfield and Nokomis. Construction management services, we need it, and we're looking to go out for it to support that work. This is a really big project in terms of the 8.4 miles. It'll be the biggest, longest project that we've done.
$20 million.
What's the timeline?
We would award in July. And it's Yeah, I think 355 days are using for, that's right. So 355 calendar days is a construction window. These have been taking as much as 15 months, but we put it out as a 1-year construction.
At 8.5 miles of significantly older pipe, this should certainly help us with our I&I.
I'm just curious about, do you have any clues to how much I&I you think you can
Could calculate
eliminate?
it,
You have not calculated?
but I haven't calculated, but we could.
That'd
That's a
be,
good idea.
I think that'd be very, very interesting, because first off, CMSA, that would be an important topic for us to forward to CMSA, because we have a reason to lower our I&I, and obviously for the public's knowledge, it's important.
This rehabilitation does include a lot of easement work in Kent Woodlands that follows drainage ways, so it is going in a lot of the areas where we have high I&I, and also where it's proximate to the creeks and drainage.
So go to the end of Butterfield?
The capacity improvements are lower Butterfield, I believe they stop at Kenrick. So there's a capacity and rehabilitation component to that one in the second package.
That's actually the county, correct?
Well, the end of Butterfield is the county.
On the beginning.
Yes, it goes to Sleepy, Butterfield goes into Sleepy Hollow. Once it's Sleepy Hollow, it's county.
We're really close to the border there, but in terms of impacts for that project, and that's one reason why we kind of deferred that and we're going to do it a little later, it's going to impact everybody in Sleepy Hollow.
And we've talked to the other agencies, to see if there's any other work.
Well, it's a shame, because Nokomis,
PG&E or the water companies.
if I remember, Nokomis has just been finished. So,
Yes, this is an easement line at McDonald.
Now, you guys know when we use that term easement line, what that means. What it means is it's one of our public mailing names that's routed up, for example, between the houses or upper
It's an
roofing,
easement line
et cetera.
on
Yeah, so
there.
it's typically not, it's not in the street basically, is what we mean when we say it's an easement line.
What was the term we used?
Easement
An easement,
line?
yeah, an easement
Oh, an
line.
easement.
Yeah, that's kind of our general label for those types of lines.
And I don't know how much of Nokomis you guys have been out there, but they haven't done the bridge project yet, so
That's
I'm not
right.
sure if
That's right.
Nokomis and
Yep.
what the limits are that they've done.
So,
yes.
Greg, we talked about the funding on this.
Right.
Can you re-enlighten me?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I got a little fuzzy on.
Yeah, the funding mix on this is going to be kind of the same funding mix we're going to see going forward. The anticipated mix is it's a combination, and part of this deals with just cash flow in the sense of if we have available unspent monies from the 14-15 bond, those are available. We have our normal ad valorem tax revenue, which is by policy used only for the capital projects. And in this case, this is one of the projects that is, it's one of 2 projects that has a state revolving fund loan application in for it. We think it's a very good fit for the SRF program, and it would be a very efficient, because it's one big project. If we had a loan, if we had an SRF loan covering all or most of this project, that would make that a very efficient process, so to speak. But it's going to be some combination of those, Pam, and the exact combination really is to be determined, because we're waiting for, we still have a couple months to go on the status of the SRF loan. So stay tuned. I mean, a lot of those decisions about bond versus SRF will be following pretty quickly on the heels of the start of the new fiscal year.
So if we don't get that particular loan, we'll go back to
Bond
the regular
issuance,
bond.
right. So first preference at this point, I think, is to have this project and some of the subsequent ones, if we can get the applications in a steady stream, to be covered by the SRF. There are a lot of trade-offs there, as the board we've talked in the past. So this is one we're going to have to sort of take it one step at a time. And over the next roughly, say, 3 to 4 months, we're going to be hitting some decision points in there where we'll say, okay, here's what we know now. Let's go ahead and start the process for bonds, or let's go ahead and hold off and continue to stick to the SRF process. on a quick side note, and this is, I'll call it anecdotal because it's sort of coming from our professional contacts. Felicia actually brought this comment. We know from at least one other local agency that they have an approved SRF loan at this point, but they were just informed that at this point in time, there are no more funds available for allocation. So I think we're all going to be in a little bit of suspense until the federal spending and budget actions take place, and that will provide clarity to the states on this. So yeah, so it's going to be some combination of those, and our fallback is to go through a standard traditional bond issuance like we did last time.
Okay. Significant savings in cash on SRF, so I think we'd probably be best off by far.
That's our first preference for this one for
So
sure.
I guess, since, I guess I'm worried about the rates really going up. And is there any way we can have that discussion? I know it's probably premature, obviously, but this is a biggie.
Yes.
The state revolving fund rate is about half of a bond measure.
Correct.
Isn't it? So significant money savings on
I understand
more
that, but
supporting.
I'm looking at the bigger, broader picture, because our 5-year rates are going to be up, and we're going to have to redo them. So is there any way we can talk about that at some point to figure out that, I'm concerned about the rates really going up to
Right.
$300 a year. I really am. And I'm wondering, these bigger projects that I know we have to do, I'm not saying anything against them,
Right.
but I just wanted to throw that out there because it is part of the equation for the ratepayers.
Well, this project is, I would say, generally reflected in the financial study that is the basis for the current 5-year schedule of rates.
Okay.
So to sort of step back, that 5-year picture had I will say, roughly $90 million package of capital projects, which of course don't go exactly as planned. And it envisioned 2 separate overall bond issuances. So there was never any question that those rates were intended to support about somewhere in the neighborhood of about $60 million in long-term bond financing in order to cover the capital program. So the first of those has been done. That's what we're kind of referred to as the 2014 bond issuance. That was $30 million and change. And we always anticipated and have been a second bond issuance somewhere in about that same neighborhood, because again, that's what the financial study showed. So we're very much in line with what the 5-year projection showed. Pam, so I guess as far as how the remaining steps of the current 5-year rate schedule play out, this particular project won't change that one way or another. It's actually fully factored into to those projections. The one thing I would say, and it doesn't, we can't really translate this into direct dollars to dollars, but this is reflective of the strategy that the district has adopted, where we can deliver 8-9 miles of the selected and prioritized rehab activity and do it under one capital project, where we literally have one project manager, we have one construction management team, and instead of this being 3 or 4 projects, each of which has 10 or 12% administration and management costs tacked on top of it, you're delivering the outcome here, which is the roughly 9 to 10 miles of pipe rehabilitation, ideally at the lowest overall cost to the public. So in terms of meeting the goals of the keeping rates at a minimum, so to speak, this actually supports that. I mean, if you can look at spending $20 million as supporting lower rates, they don't quite go together. But does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
This doesn't
I guess
change
we'll be
anything in our
talking about
financial
it
plan.
next year. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, just one quick thing,
Okay.
so I did misspeak, this one doesn't have the Kent Woodlands.
I was going to say, I didn't see that one listed in the map, I was
So
looking
that's
for
the
it.
1516, okay, that's all right. But we can calculate it for both the combined projects.
I'd be interested in that. I mean,
Oh,
In a lot of ways, I agree with what Pam said. What I would like our district to get to is a pay-as-you-go,
Yeah, I was thinking.
and where we dedicate our property taxes to capital, and we have a certain amount, maybe almost a matching amount, $4 million or something like that a year of service charges, so that we do these projects, a lot of which are, red projects, as we high-risk projects, but we move off of that and get into the yellow and the green, the greens that are turning to yellow. And so we can support like a $10 million a year of capital. Now we're doing, 60 million, 90 million in 7 years, whatever. It's higher than I think we should plan to sustain. That we should be lower than that. And then our rate adjustments would be only for increased costs, and the property tax goes up 2% a year. So, that's what I'm hoping we get to at some time, not too far in the future. Now, I had another point. I don't really believe these projects reduce I&I that much. I think our I&I is coming from illegal connections and, the state connections that are dumping water into our system. But if these don't reduce I&I, what's the value of doing these projects? Say we don't get too much I&I out of it, which I think we will. We'll get some. But what's the engineering value of doing all these rehabs?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, and it's an important change in focus that is coming up, for the capital program. So if you look back to the 2013 Infrastructure Asset Management Plan, it emphasized and was largely based on, first of all, the asset management risk-based approach to assessing, okay, we've got 200 miles of system, we know a lot of it's in very bad shape, but how do we get a systematic, dependable, consistent way of saying, here's why we're going to fix these pipes and not those pipes over there. So we adopted the risk management approach, the risk model approach, and that risk model analysis, Tom, one of the important points about it was driven by considerations of SSO reduction, I would say essentially SSO risk reduction and structural integrity of the system. So those were the factors, broadly speaking, that drove the ranking and the evaluation of the pipe segments to say, okay, here's why these miles of pipe are flashing the brightest red. What was not in the first round of the asset management plan for this agency was a focus on I&I reduction. Now, are the two exclusive? No, they're
if it's going down, it's probably
generally speaking, when we fix the public mains, we are eliminating many sources of I&I, we're fixing laterals in many cases. So it's not that there's no benefit, but it was not the primary focus. And Catherine and I are talking a fair amount about this, and one of the upcoming big activities for the new fiscal year is we're going to begin work on a 5-year update to the asset management plan. So think of the 2013 plan as a 5-year plan. We're nearing the end of that horizon. We're going to update it with a new 5-year plan. That new 5-year plan, we fully expect to have a heavy shift away from SSO reduction, because we hope to show that that has been brought down to a reasonable level, and it will shift to more of an I&I reduction focus. So in terms of saying which parts of the system are flashing red and we should go fix, the analysis and the methodology to determine that it'll have risk factors tied to I&I explicitly. But we're not there yet. And this question comes up for good reason repeatedly, or periodically, which is, okay, we're going to fix all that pipe. What about the I&I thing? Are we going to see a proportional drop in I&I? And it would be really nice if we had, but the reality is that the first 3 to 4 years of this program have not been targeted on I&I. Not because we wouldn't want to reduce I&I, but we didn't have any information, and what we had was a marching order from the state saying structural integrity, SSO reduction, public health and safety is what you need to tackle. So to answer your question, Tom, from an engineering perspective, what you're getting out of these projects is vastly improved structural integrity, vastly improved service reliability, vastly reduced SSO risk reduction, and most likely some ancillary benefits in terms of I&I reduction, but that wasn't their focus. And we hope to shift to that focus as we get past this next cycle of projects.
Well, during the high flood events of December and January of this year, there were significant SSOs in San Anselmo, correct?
Yes.
And I pointed out 2 of them during those different rain events. So I think moreover, the previous capital improvement projects have lowered SSOs because our SSO has significantly dropped over the last few years. But I have to believe that if it's going out, it's coming in. Moreover, I think, Catherine, you saw that you think, or Steve guessed, that it was maybe 5 million gallons a day on a high rain day coming in down Center Avenue in San Anselmo, if I remember correctly. He
I
said
think we projected, based on the velocity in that 18-inch line, if they were raining.
about 5 million. So that's,
It was,
yeah, and
that
I
sounds
think,
familiar.
so I would, obviously, I&I is huge because in the long run, that cuts the cost to the ratepayer because we're not paying to treat and pump and move fresh, clean rainwater. So obviously that's key, but the state's going to find the heck of it out of us if we don't fix the SSO issue, which I think is under control. But I still think it'd be interesting to see what you project on the I&I, and then at the end of the day, see how close we came to those projections on these projects.
So that was my point, is that, for the amount of money, it isn't an I&I correction. There's other reasons that are valid for us to be doing these projects. And I like the idea of shifting to I&I because that'll cut down on SSO costs, et cetera. So,
It sort of feeds into the EPA report at the end on page 26, where the EPA is a Ross, 2 paragraphs, I'll just read it. Ross Valley Sanitary District has used asset management to eliminate unnecessary capital projects recommended from traditional capital planning efforts. A single project eliminated by use of asset management reduced the total cost of the district's capital program by approximately $4 million. By utilizing asset management, the district revamped its $100 million capital program to reevaluate and ultimately eliminate multiple poorly defined and improperly prioritized projects and helped ensure the funds went to projects with the highest return to the level of service goals established by the district during the asset management process. One more little bit. The district also found that having a sound AMP is valuable communicating the basis for major capital programs and related rate increases to ratepayers. By having a sound AMP, the district was able to approve a 5-year schedule of rate increases totaling over 40% with minimal public opposition. So that we're fixing, because of what Greg did when he first came in here with the infrastructure asset management plan, that we are fixing the red zone projects that are going to cause us the most grief with the State Water Resources Control Board. So it's not just about I&I, you're right, Tom, but it's about fixing. Once we get all the red zone stuff that you showed to the State Water Resources Control Board, well, once we get those projects done, we can calm down on the capital and be very strategic about what we do next and reduce our capital improvement costs.
Yeah.
All right. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve consideration of authorization staff to issue a notice inviting bids and file a notice of exemption for construction of the fiscal year 2016-2017 gravity sewer rehabilitation project, bid package number 1, and issue a request for proposals for construction management services for fiscal year 2016-17 gravity sewer rehabilitation and improvement projects.
Second.
Kelly Borstein, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item number 12, RVSD private sewer lateral program update. This is show.
We're going to go right into the presentation. There's no staff report, so we'll. So, that's all right. So Catherine and I are going to sort of alternate on the presentation, so I'll get us started here. But we wanted to just use this opportunity to kind of give the board a comprehensive update on the lateral program. We've had a number of significant activities under development for the past few years. The board initiated all of this originally with the passage of the ordinance and all the supporting activities since then. And we know that at this point, with a couple of years of practical experience on the program, we're also learning a lot, and we anticipate a number of updates and changes, coming your way. So we wanted to kind of go through these. This is a discussion and direction item. We're not looking for any votes or anything this evening. Okay, so the first thing we want to start with is this picture, because it's a very simple but very notable picture, which is from fiscal year 12-13 to fiscal year 16-17. The district has gone from right around 200 laterals a year to a program that at the moment is trending somewhere between 600 and 700 laterals a year. So by any measure of public lateral replacement programs, that would be considered a very, very successful trend. So I think it's worth just taking, in a sense, for the district to acknowledge that, for the board to understand that the decisions you made over the past couple of years, the resources that have been put to the program, have really achieved and actually exceeded our projections at the beginning of what would be a really successful program. If you may recall, some of you were here, this is going back a ways, Vivian Housen and myself, we gave a presentation on what the lateral program might look like if everything went really well, and we got people to do it for this, and we had these stacked bars of activity. Is how do you get to 400 to 500 laterals, which seemed like a tough but maybe obtainable goal. Well, the program went well past that, and again, we're holding steady at 600 to 700 laterals a year. Business processes are able to support it. Inspection processes, customer service levels are high. There's a very, very, relative to the volume of business, there is just a very, very small number of hiccups occasionally that are happening. But by all accounts, the district at this point has a very successful and relatively stable lateral program. That's the good news. Bad news is, the change never stops coming, and we're going to talk about what some of those new things are that are coming our way. So we're going to start going through these topics with you. We're going to talk a little bit about why the laterals matter. We're going to review the elements of the program, what their current status is, and some of the lessons learned, and what do we see coming next on things like the ordinance, compliance, the financial assistance programs, how we're integrating laterals to the capital projects like the one we just considered. And this is one of the new ones from what I just said a moment ago. We didn't really see this coming about 1 or 2 years ago, but in the past year, it's become very clear there's a whole new driver to lateral replacements that we didn't see. And that is the fact that all the other communities, Larkspur, the county, San Anselmo, et cetera, are all dealing with the difficult and degraded nature of their streets, and they are finding funding sources, and as they get those funding sources, they are ramping up their paving programs, and that in turn is putting a whole new set of drivers, because as you alluded to earlier, Doug, those paving programs result in those 5-year moratorium statuses, and if you're an unlucky homeowner or property owner that needs to replace a lateral, you're faced potentially at least with additional costs to do that can be as high as $15,000 to $20,000 in extra paving costs. So that's something that our customers and ratepayers are facing. So that's what we're going to go through. This is really important, okay, because there's all kinds of details and issues associated with laterals, but why do they even matter? And this is what it boils down to. We have 200 miles of public system that has all of these issues. It has high I&I, it has a lot of structural issues that we've been trying to collectively get our hands around and improve. That manifests itself with going from 5 to 50 MGD during the wet weather events. And the private sewer laterals you can roughly think of as sort of the private parallel to the public. There's about 15,000 of them, but when you add them up, you basically have 200 miles of lateral for 200 miles of public system. And they have, generally speaking, the same age trends, condition trends, etc. So think of public, private as really very closely related, two sides of the system, so to speak, with the same basic drivers. And then if you look at the things we're trying to solve as an agency, and what are our big challenges, I&I reduction, SSO risk reduction, providing a high level of customer service, and doing so in a way that has regulatory compliance, you cannot solve any one of those four problems without addressing laterals. You cannot effectively achieve I&I reduction, you cannot effectively achieve SSO prevention, because we already know from our own operations data, when you factor out the wet weather flows, the vast majority of SSOs occurring in our agency are no longer on the public system, they're on the private system. And that is not something that is going unnoticed by the regulators, because we're not the only agency showing those kinds of trends. So there's an expectation in the industry that the regulatory focus is going to slowly start to shift to the private laterals anyway, because they're going to go to where the risk is next. And really, also quite fundamentally, we know that we're striving for a high level of customer service. And there's nothing more basic for our industry in terms of customer service than whether or not, the conveyance is reliable at that property, and that means the wastewater leaves that property, goes into the public system without any problems. And that is, the lateral is the key to that. If I don't have an effective, or if I don't have a good condition lateral, I cannot expect to have reliable, safe wastewater service. So this, no matter what we talk about with laterals, when we talk about decisions, policy decisions, discretionary things, we should always be able to bring them back to one of these in terms of why are we doing it. And if we can't tie it back to one of these, we should probably be asking ourselves why are we doing it. So that's why they matter. And with that, I'm going to have Catherine take you through kind of where we've gone with the ordinance.
So the ordinance we passed in 2014, it was effective in 2015. There are different triggers there. Some of them are customer initiated. They sell, they remodel, and then there's the condition-based triggers for coming into compliance, which are risk of SSO, noted condition, overflows on their properties. So we passed the ordinance. It's been effective. As you see, we've had that increase, doubling, tripling of the lateral work, and we have enforcement systems and processes developed. They're strongest on the home sale compliance aspect of that. So in terms of performance, remodels are, we get a help there with the agencies having jurisdiction for building permits. So the remodels come with much higher compliance strictly because we can tie it to the building permit process. And then the home sale compliance, we tracked it starting in 2015, and as of right now, we have 80% from the home sale compliance, 80% of properties are in compliance.
How are you missing
20%.
20%?
That's the enforcement picture. So we have a series of 4 escalating letters. So we start with, our whole goal in the process is to encourage voluntary compliance. We don't want to, at 60 days or out of compliance, come down with a hammer. So we really want to encourage the voluntary. We're sending a series of 4 escalating letters. About half the people are in compliance, before we start that process. And then we get incrementally closer and closer to compliance with each one of those rounds of letters. And then we're left in the 4th step, we've sent the final letter, about 20% of the properties that aren't compliant at that point. Right now it's 76 properties that have reached that stage. And current tools, processes, we have it sustainable. Their condition-based enforcement hasn't been a large focus to date. So doing that will require further planning, definition of the criteria, and the enforcement processes for that.
The 20% are there, are they technical issues or just they don't want to do it?
They're not responding.
Oh, they're just...
We send them letters and so I think kind of digging into that, there are some questions on, potentially is it an off-site owner? Are things not getting to them? So that's something that we can chase down a little bit more, but we really want to look into how we can get to that last 20%.
I mean, in a way, it's kind of amazing that 80% are doing it.
No,
With literally no penalty at this point for
We're
not
going to enforce this.
complying.
When we talk about enforcement, it shouldn't be hard for us to enforce 100% compliance. The home's getting sold, or it's not getting sold.
We have the data, we know the status. But yeah, it's interesting that this last 20%, they're not saying we don't want to do it or we don't agree. We're not able to get a word out of anybody for anything. There's silence. So that's kind of the challenge with
I
that.
mean, we aren't able to stop transfer type, right? We don't stop the real estate transfer.
No, this is all happening on purpose. It's happening post escrow close, et cetera, which, you know, we'll talk more about in a minute. But yes, these are communications that go on for months where we're just trying to get someone to respond to us, and we're getting zero response from
Doug, how is it using the report? I think it's pretty difficult to enforce
The transfer of a home is a legal tool. It's a legal transaction. It seems to me we can work with the county to ensure that that legal transaction doesn't occur.
Well, so let me suggest this, because we're going to, we forgot to mention this at the beginning of the presentation. Our plan was to, because we're going to go through these series of topics, and we thought we'd stop at each one, at the end of each one, and kind of delve into it a little bit more and then go to the next. So she's got one more quick slide on compliance, and we can address some of those questions.
So one factor that's interesting, 75% of the work is being done by the buyer. So we had allowed for that in our ordinance, 60 days after escrow. Looking ahead, we're looking at some ways to get to the customer-initiated compliance, setting specific targets. What is our compliance target? Is it 100%? Is it 90%? And then reviewing this four-step of enforcement. Is a different system potentially going to be more effective and kind of cause less problems for the customer and the agency? And then condition-based compliance, we've started smoke testing, so that's the first step where we go after the INI reduction compliance. There's potentially a high volume of impacted properties because the condition-based drivers, there's a lot of laterals, there's a lot of information about the laterals. Even just from our mainline inspections, we see up the laterals and we can tell a lot. So we're going to roll into the condition-based enforcement in the same way we did with the home sale compliance and other aspects. It's not just do everything all at once, but set the criteria and the processes, the policies and procedures, and just define it so it's really clear and repeatable. And customer service, one thing that we've identified, it'd be good if they had an online tool where they could go and check compliance status. So that's, at this point, a relatively small step for us to get the data. So we prioritize that as a looking ahead step for compliance. So we've started the discussion.
Yeah, so just, again, we wanted to so this is, you've kind of just seen the status of compliance, and we can keep going to the next subjects, but Doug, at a minimum, just to address your comments, we did quite a bit of evaluation and discussion when the ordinance was passed, and then we held off on making it effective for a year because we had all these discussions about how best to make it work. And one of the examples that you'll see is, originally the first draft of the ordinance said you have to be compliant before close of escrow. And then the real world experience of other agencies and the feedback from the real estate community and others was, you know what, you're going to really gum up the works if every property transaction in the Ross Valley is hung up dependent on this lateral completion. And that turned out, I think, in hindsight, to be good advice, because people do generally get to compliance, but because of the whole nature of everything else going on with property transactions and so forth, what we're finding is they do it after the transaction is done. And it's done by the buyer, again, in 75% of the cases, And we purposely, the ordinance allows for 60 days after escrow, and we worked out that timeline in cooperation with the real estate, community, with the idea that, okay, the dust is settled on the immediate transaction. We didn't interject ourselves in that important business transaction, and now the new owner has 2 months, which at the time seemed very reasonable, to bring the property into compliance. And so the clock wouldn't start ticking on non-compliance until 60 days after the close of escrow. Now, what we've come to find with the real world is, in actuality, it's taking even more than 60 days, and at a minimum, part of that is the sheer volume of activity of lateral replacement is straining the local contractor community, and our own records and the customer feedback show is that from the moment you decide you want to go get your lateral done, you might be looking at 2 to 3 months of advanced scheduling to get a qualified contractor on site to do the work because they simply are booked out that much. So the point of that is there was a lot of consideration into how best to set a hook, but not make that hook be something that was very disruptive or difficult to handle. And this hasn't quite gotten us to the compliance levels we're looking for, but we're pretty clear on the remaining gaps, let me put it that way.
Could we put in, I'm not saying we want to, you just explain why you don't. I'm asking legally, can we put in a requirement that they don't close escrow until the laterals are replaced?
Well, I do know, we talked earlier about this, that East Bay Mud, for example, has a requirement that you put in a certain amount of money into escrow and then they give it back to you once you've done the work.
Okay.
So that it's something that we can look into, and part of this is circling back with the real estate community and trying to work together to make sure that we're not doing something that is viewed by portions of the community.
As I mentioned to Greg once, I went out and met them about this very issue. So I don't want to come up with their works, but my point is that maybe we can put something in there where we at least require a plan so that the 20% that aren't answering can't not answer. Somebody's got to answer us. I mean, we need a letter, we need a phone call, we need a note on a post-it, something that says you acknowledge that you've been advised of this. That's my only concern. And I don't want to mess up the realtors, but
Are the 20% actually the buyers saying, yeah, we'll take care of it afterwards? And then
no, they're not even answering.
So, we've heard that there is who's taking responsibility is being addressed in the sale of the property, but we don't have any
I see.
data or information about that. But the owner and the buyer, it's a disclosure item that this is something that they're considering, like who takes responsibility.
Because my guess is that, yeah, it's, the buyer says, oh no, I'll take care of that later because of the market, current real estate market here in Marin, and then just doesn't.
Well, I thought you said that 20% aren't even answering your calls.
Yeah, the buyers.
It's
But
not-
they may have made
it's
some
not-
agreement or commitment. They took the responsibility as part of the
I
transaction.
personally, I think we could have promised the realtors that we wouldn't gum up there.
No, and I have, and I don't want to. What I'm saying is if somebody's not answering you, that's not acceptable.
Or we have other approaches. And for example, one might be that, okay, if you don't repair your sewer, then we're going to assume a certain amount of INI in that
Right.
sewer, and we're going to levy a surcharge.
You're
Because you've got more
you're
water.
stealing their thunder, Tom. That's kind of nuts.
Oh,
is it?
It was a fine.
Tom, I support that, but I'm also trying
It
to
was
address,
compliance.
I'm trying to address the issue that Catherine has raised, which is that nobody is acknowledging that this is an issue that they need to deal with. 20%, Catherine says, don't even answer the letters. That's just people ignoring us. That's as if you got fired and you didn't open up your mail.
Is there a real estate form? You know how there's a stack of forms?
Oh,
It
yes.
says
There are
you've
real
got to
estate
repair.
firms like you wouldn't
Yeah,
believe.
I haven't seen it, the most recent version, but that was one of the things that we talked about in the first workshops with the realtor groups when we first initiated Ordinance 66. And my understanding is that they have a standard disclosure form that they've adopted from their counterparts over in East Bay that is typically included in the real estate paperwork these days. So between the buyer and the seller, they're acknowledging the responsibilities for the lateral in some fashion. And again,
That's why we're getting the 80%. We're like folding into their,
Right.
their permitting
Right.
system.
Yeah, so we think that, we've got a couple of ideas on the table. One of the more straightforward ones at this point is to shift away from an action that says, well, we might eventually come on the property and replace the lateral for you if it hasn't been done, and maybe more emphasize something that after a certain amount of criteria and steps have been checked, you shift to something like a daily fine or whatever that then is attached to the tax rolls, it's a lien on the property. And that way, at least by the end of the next tax cycle, something's going to trigger another heavy, a not very subtle signal is going to come to whoever owns that house that, hold it, you do need to take care of the lateral, because now you've got an accumulated fine that just showed up as a lien on your tax bill.
Yeah,
Which is on one of the last slides of this presentation.
Yes.
So much enforcement. Maybe we need to bring back the ordinance.
Well, we
Because
have,
East Bay Mud are the people who gave birth to
right.
this whole thing. And I've watched them for years, and they kind of they've already tested these waters, is what I think. So.
Right, and we've learned a lot from them in our first, in fact, luckily we took a lot of their advice in terms of how we launched the program. For example, that's why we had we immediately allowed for up to a 1-year delay before it was effective, so we could work with the community and they told us that, don't expect perfection, expect to iterate on this to get it to work. But we have had a goal in mind, which is that we want to emphasize voluntary compliance, and that was kind of that 90-10 rule. We're pretty sure we can get about 90% compliance with about 10% of the overall effort, in the sense that you could flip that and say, okay, for that final 10%, you're going to spend an inordinate amount of staff time and other types of resources to get that. So somewhere in there is a practical balance, and we're not sure it's 90, but we're going to, at the moment, that's our working idea. And that is East Bay Mud's formal target, by the way.
Very hard.
To say you don't want perfection, but you want 90% compliance on the long term going forward. So, okay, so that's compliance. We'll go on to the next one.
Next is the grant program. This is our most well-established program, the systems, the processes. It's been in place since fiscal year 2009-2010. It was updated in 2015 as part of the whole lateral program reboot or updates with the ordinance. We've done about 1,400 laterals. Combined, the district and customers have spent about $9 million replacing 16 miles of lateral. So there's been a lot of lateral work done. It's averaging $100 a foot. We've kind of seen this year that it's not really driving replacements. About 2/3 of the customers this year aren't applying for grants. So that's a change. We don't know if that's related to the grant amount this time, but right now a little bit less participation in this. The future, we're looking to streamline the processes. There's some, at a lower grant amount, do we need 3 bids from the customers? Are there some ways that the application process could be simpler? We definitely related to the same question, 90 days, we have a hard stop, 90 days, we can't allow the grant to extend beyond that, the approval. So we're going to come to you looking for an extension of that time frame. So we have more time for them to complete the work, with a plumbing contractor potentially 90 days out. It's a short time frame. And then, evaluate the grant levels, the eligibility, having a baseline grant or not having a baseline grant, doing targeted incentives for the I&I, the SSO, the paving moratorium areas, trying to use the grant program to get to the I&I, the SSO reduction, rather than just kind of being a backstop to trigger-driven, compliance-driven replacements. And we're talking about the loan program, also 2015, $10,000 limit. It's been relatively underutilized, and we're not quite sure why. It'll be self-funding, eventually. Its intention is that it's a self-funding thing. People repay the amounts. So district has funded significantly more than the money has gone out in the budget. So 55 laterals to date. we're not quite sure why participation is low. You know, our contractor's not willing, our homeowners turned off by the loan concept. And then the same thing, the same questions about the incentives that we talked about on the grant side for the loan. You know, do we want to have a baseline, you know, and build in incentives and requirements for high SSO areas, high INI areas, paving? Do we want to think about improvements which are removing INI, which aren't directly on the lateral? You know, if this is possible, removing a sump pump, so disconnecting a sump pump. It's connected to the lateral, but there's some work involved in that which is not directly on the lateral. So looking at ways that we might be able to incentivize some of that. So we're going to talk now about the grant and the loan. Leave it open.
Yeah, so just, we're going to pause there. So just in terms of financial assistance, which that's the grant and loan programs, questions, comments on that whole topic?
On the evaluate the need for CCTV and 3 bid requirements for approval. It used to be when you crashed your car, you had to go get 3 bids. And then the insurance agencies started approving individual shops that you could just go to and get 1 bid. Could we somehow approve certain plumber agencies and say, if you go to these people, we have certified them as being RSVD compliant, and we fully trust, because we're going out there and checking their work and seeing that they're not overcharging or doing that kind of thing, so that you wouldn't have to do the 3
I think, if I may, I think the way some of the auto dealerships work is there's a standard in the industry, which most of us don't know, about what a radiator replacement is supposed to cost, what a back panel replacement is supposed to cost. So if we come up with what we have here somewhere, an average of $100 a foot, that's really where it is. It wouldn't necessarily have to be any number, because I think somebody should be able to call somebody from Nevada or Oregon, and if they're, going to do it right, as long as it's within the cost estimate of about $100 a foot, or 80 or 50 or whatever we decide it is.
I mean, I think in some of our places where maybe they're using that easement, that your lateral has to go between 2 houses, 100 feet all of a sudden becomes far more difficult. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but.
Well, actually, why do we need bids? I mean, they're paying for it.
Not on a grant.
Yeah, well, either the grant, or if they get a high bid, we'll give them a loan up to 10,000. It's a lien on their property.
Well, the loan, obviously, the loan is not an issue, I don't think. It's only on the grant
On
program.
the grant, we only give it, whatever we give, it's $1,500 now.
At the current level right now, nobody's qualifying for less than the full grant. So at the $1,500 amount, average lateral is costing $8,200, $8,300. So right now is there,
Sort of a self-fulfilling.
That's
You don't want a high bid.
15 feet.
Huh?
That's 15 feet.
But maybe some of the reason we all, 2/3 of the people are not even bothering with going through this is they just don't want to deal with getting 3.
And they're too busy anyway. I'm not giving any more bids.
Well, and also remember, like when the grant program was first started, the funding levels were, for a couple of those fiscal cycles, they were as high as, $4,000. And I think that, one purpose of the 3 bids was that you wanted to make sure that, because then if you're looking at a $6,000 lateral replacement, $4,000 was a big chunk of it. You wanted to make sure that the public funds, were going as far as they could, and that you weren't having people like saying, oh, well, I'll give you this bid, and I know you're going to pay for it because you've got this $4,000, et cetera. But what we're finding is that $1,500 funding levels relative to the average cost of lateral replacement, those concerns really aren't as significant, number one, because as I think we're pointing out, look, there's really not a way to abuse that grant monies in a sense. They're just not significant enough relative to the average cost. And also, as I think one of you just noted, from a more practical perspective, that pre-bid requirement, anecdotally, we think is a lot of people are hitting that point and going, I'm just moving on. 'Cause I'll be lucky if I can get one bid, because I can't get a contractor to show up on a house, because they're scheduled 90 days out, or whatever it is.
On the loan program, I don't see why we'd even care about a bid, it's a loan.
True,
What do we care?
true.
I mean, they're paying for it, I mean, that's, if I'm a homeowner, I want the cheapest price for me,
Yeah.
I want my lowest loan, I think that's unnecessary to have 3 bids.
And we do have the RVSD, what we call generally the approved contractor list. That just means that those people have signed paperwork indicating familiarity with the program and our standards and all that. So we do think it's worth considering eliminating it, but we'll bring you that back as a change in the future. But just real quick, some of the examples on these incentives would be things like, okay, there's a baseline grant for $1,500, but we've done some rough financial analysis that shows that if you're up in some of our peak I&I basins, and you really want to drive lateral replacement in those peak I&I basins, you might be able to justify a grant level as high as $4,000 to $5,000 in terms of the net benefit long-term to the agency in terms of reduced I&I volumes. Paving, good example there. Okay, if the loan program is capped at 10,000, but we have a customer who suddenly whose job went from 9,000 to 20,000 because of the extra paving costs for the moratorium, would we want to extend them a higher loan limit to cover the costs of the paving? So those are just some ideas behind the incentives being a little more targeted.
You know, I was thinking in the paving, if there's a 5-year moratorium, that we could postpone the deployment for 5 years. And say you have to, after the moratorium, because that's a killer.
And we do have some other mechanisms that potentially we could authorize lining of the lower laterals in that case. So there are some other things that we can think about that we already have the ability to do, because, even coming in, we approved the ordinance, there were 5 years worth of paving projects that people would be stuck by moratorium. Part of that's us, tracking the data and making sure that we reach out to those homeowners to let them know that they should talk to us if they're under a moratorium, rather than them getting stuck. Was there anything else on this, or? Capital projects, the current practice on the capital projects, we do the lower laterals at the same time that we pipe burst or open cut the main lines. The lower laterals are always pipe burst, but we do the replacement of the lowers only when we're pipe bursting and open cut. Relatively small, 500 lower laterals, 7,000 feet. Some of them are really short. I think we're averaging 15 feet of replacement as part of the capital project. Sometimes it's 5. And one thing to look at is the strategy. We're not currently, we're sealing up the connection at the main when we're lining the pipe, but we're not doing anything on the lateral. So we may, look at that. More than half of the rehabilitation work done right now is lining. And do we want to offer incentives, ways to encourage upper lateral replacement so we end up with a whole entire good lateral at the same time? And what Greg mentioned earlier, we're looking at doing the next INP update and really documenting the comprehensive lateral replacement picture, lateral program picture as part of that update. Anything on the capital projects? That's it.
Paving programs, okay. So the paving programs are that's one of the new elements that is sort of in development. And the challenges with this are really significant, starting with the fact that we have 5 independent local governments with 5 independent paving programs and close to zero coordination as to how those programs are being implemented. There is just not a strong structure in place in Marin County and not in Ross Valley, certainly, to encourage and incentivize, and by whatever term you want to use, have an outcome whereby all these local governments that are out there doing work in the streets season after season after season have an effective way to look more than about 6 months ahead and look more like 1 to 2 to 3 years ahead and schedule and prioritize and plan their work. So now that we have the paving programs wrapping up, this is more and more of a challenge. Just looking out to this upcoming construction season with the projects we know the local governments have, there'll be 400 properties that are potentially affected by paving programs. And just statistically, we know that about 1/5 of those, after that paving gets done, someone's going to decide to sell a house, someone's going to decide to pull a permit for a new addition or a bathroom, someone's just going to get sick and tired of their lateral not working. So for any variety of reasons, they're going to elect to get their lateral replaced. And what they're going to find is that's where they're going to be. They're going to be between the local government that paved the street and told them, congratulations, you want to dig here, here's your extra $15,000 in costs, and the sanitary agency that said, you're selling your house, you got to bring it up to compliance. So this is a big deal. We've already talked about that. We know from the successful examples like San Anselmo and other areas, you really need, a good year's advance notice that you're going to be out here in Doherty Drive or up in Madrone Canyon, and you're going to be doing paving, and you need that 12-month window to be pushing and working with the property owners and coordinating to get the work done. When we get 6 months notice of a capital project, or in some cases 3 months notice of a capital project from a local paving agency, the reality is there's just not much we can do. It's like, thanks for nothing. I mean, we can't do anything. You look at what it takes, and we look at what goes into our program. You guys know what the steps are. We've got design, we've got budgeting, we've got permitting, we can't turn on a dime and say, oh, you want to go do work on that street? Okay, we'll rush over there and help the people replace their laterals. So this lack of interagency coordination and advance notice, it's not serving anybody very well. And it's just a real challenge for us right now. We're not exactly sure what we're going to do about it. We know what success looks like. Success looks like what San Anselmo and Ross Valley have been able to do, where we are able to look out 1, 2, 3 years in advance. It's not a rigid, it's more of a rolling forecast. We update it. And we've had projects where we go in, we do extensive full depth replacements of streets, and every single lateral in that place is taken care of. I mean, it's not that complicated when the agencies choose to put in the upfront planning to make it happen. But that's really on a voluntary basis where, staff work together and those outcomes, are realized. So these are some of the things we're kind of thinking about as far as where do you go next. Can we have targeted incentives for advanced replacement? If it is a post-moratorium situation, do we offer those folks higher levels of financial assistance to cover the higher cost of paving? And lastly, if we do have enough advance notice that Street A is going to have 2,000 feet of paving next summer, there's at least an option where the district could come in under a public contract and do wholesale replacement of those laterals and not leave it up to every individual property owner to go, they don't want to do this. We would come in, and based on the conditions of laterals and the records we have, we would have a contractor come in and do them at batch, which we think typically results in 30 to 50% cost savings on having the laterals done. But even this really relies on having some advance notice and coordination between the government agencies. So that's really the key. So this is in development, kind of stay tuned, but there are questions on the paving.
Do we say like I need my lateral replaced, would I pay all the way to the main? So I would pay for both the upper and the lower lateral?
Yes.
So what if we paid for the lower laterals? On a paving project, we pay for lower laterals.
We could do that. Or
we could
Well,
Sure.
we could share. The issue is if we pay it because there's going to be a pavement moratorium, and we do it because there's a pavement moratorium, there's no incentive for them to do the others. We have to make sure that they do.
We share it.
Okay.
And there are, yeah, and there are agencies that do, you know, have, you know, we're looking at other agencies that have had success doing that. You know, you come in with a batch contract, and so you have a contractor who's doing 30 or 40 or 50 laterals, and that's where you achieve the cost savings versus the individual. So,
We have our fourth step now is to get, we're gonna go and replace your lateral for you. And that's completely impractical, isn't it? You're gonna ruin somebody's prized petunia field or something.
yes,
Hey,
exactly. Okay, so this is just kind of a high-level recap of some of the changes we see coming. The board will be seeing some ordinance refinements. Some of those are going to be somewhat perfunctory. Remember, we passed Ordinance 66, and then we passed about 5 more ordinances over the next year to make modifications and to postpone effective dates. What at least one update we'll be bringing you is a complete repackaging into one new ordinance. We'll get rid of that stream of old ordinances, and it'll just be the one ordinance. We'll be bringing you some ideas and suggestions for the targeted incentives for the grants and loans tied to the high I&I basins, maybe tied to the paving moratorium issues. This one is one we'll be studying more. It's easy for us to go smoke test a neighborhood and find, you know, umpteen properties that appear to be in violation of the ordinance. The hard part is once you move to an enforcement mode, that becomes a big time commitment and so forth to push those properties to actually take action. So we're still thinking about how best to approach what we call the condition-based enforcement. Again, shifting to fines or other mechanisms for that final slice of non-compliant properties. And also the adoption of formal goals for the agency. You know, because we need something that says, this is where we're headed for, this is our objective, and that helps us put some of these decisions into context. This idea of I&I free property certification is one we'll keep looking at. And it could involve, again, financial incentives for things we didn't traditionally pay for. Catherine mentioned the sump pumps. So you bought a house 2 years ago, you took it on face value, okay, I got my nice house, everything's great. Suddenly your lateral fails, we come in, we help you with the lateral, but then we're like, oh, you've got a sump pump. And now you've got to pay for relocation of that sump pump, maybe you have illegal roof drains that you inherited with the property. We'd like to consider providing, because some of those could be, you know, costly upgrades, if they are done as a package that gets that property completely, you know, essentially I&I free, we'd want to think about, you know, considering incentives for that. And that's what some of these are.
Just out of curiosity, when we go back and have these discussions again with the Marin Realtor Association,
Yeah.
maybe there could be 2 more boxes that they would check. Like, we certify this house is, their downspouts are not connected, and we certify that there isn't a sump pump there. And just in advance, I mean, we'll check
Yeah.
all the
Unless
other
there's a
stuff.
penalty, I'm gonna guess those boxes come back checked.
Well, no, but then the penalty would be that then if the new owners,
I'm a real estate agent.
if the new owners find that that's not true, then they can go back and say,
Yeah, as part of like the dry rot inspection,
Yeah.
already connected.
Can I,
That's a good idea.
Greg, if Ross Valley is rewriting our regulations, it's really the right time for us to coordinate with the other sanitary districts to have one county-wide program.
Right.
This is what the realtors want, and this is what, you know, in talking to them, we should work on. I think it's critically important, and I don't think the other districts are any different from us. So can we have a coordinated meeting with the other districts? No, I don't mean us necessarily, you.
Yeah,
I mean, certainly we could as directors, but it'd be a lot easier if you general managers all met
yes,
and kind of traded notes and saw what's the problem.
right. That has been tried in the past, and it's been a goal, I think, that's been suggested, you know, going back, I think some of the early, even North Bay Watershed Association at one point sponsored an effort to come up with sort of a standardized approach to the laterals. So I think that's a goal that from a public policy perspective, we should support, and from a practical perspective, it makes a ton of sense. You know, why just the minute I cross Highway 101 from Corte Madera to Larkspur, our sewer lateral is suddenly under a different set of conditions. It doesn't make sense. You wouldn't do that with, with any number of other utility entities. So, yeah, by all means, I mean, I think
I'm
how
not
we
sure
do that, Doug, I don't know. I mean,
Well, I think this district didn't have a general manager that worked well with other people.
yeah.
And I think you do, right?
Well, we're not, the gap between us and some of the other agencies varies in the sense of how we're approaching this. So I think getting that group together and at least starting the conversation with the, some of the key agencies would be the first step. And just getting for example, just getting the CMSA, JPA service area agencies to have a common approach to laterals would be a huge step. Because at that point, you've got a fairly good chunk of Marin County.
Yeah.
And then you've got your really chopped up agencies, so to speak, down in southern Marin, you've got to bring along 6 different agencies, covering Mill Valley and Sausalito, all of which have their own approaches right now. So it's a challenge, like a lot of things, because of the number of agencies involved. But I think if we start with the CMSA, JPA member agencies, that's a really great starting point. Then you've got Las Colinas and Novato, which are pretty well developed in terms of their lateral programs. If you could get that slice of Marin County onto the same page as far as laterals, you'd have a pretty big start there. So I think that's something we can start chipping away at, Doug.
Okay.
Would it make any sense to bring the Marin Association of Realtors in and try to have them coordinate and put it
No,
out?
I think they're asking us to do that, and I think it's our job to do that. I mean, they don't know,
I mean, we are doing that,
we're doing it here,
yeah.
but what.
But they would like it to be
Uniform.
uniform.
They would like
I'm
to see
asking
us-
Greg, and
Yeah, yeah.
if Greg can work with the other agencies, and if he needs help from this board to talk to our colleagues, I think we're happy to do that. I am.
It's been a big topic of interest for people. I think that Las Colinas and Nevada are both, they're regularly getting asked to kind of take a look at their programs. Rather than do it one at a time, why don't we all get together and see if we can come up with a single approach?
So can we send out a letter to the other districts in CMSA and then Las Colinas and Novato and do exactly what we're suggesting? We're looking at our lateral program, we're asking to have a meeting, and we're asking to coordinate this together.
Specifically on the real estate sale trigger, right?
Well,
Yes.
yes, but also, if we're rerunning the lateral program, because we're talking about the triggers that are otherwise, I don't think it would harm to have them all the same. So yes, specifically that, because that's been a real hair trigger for those folks.
How about
It's a
this?
challenge for them, but as long as we're doing it, why not just try and have a lateral program? That's
How about
countywide.
this? How about for the next CMSA meeting, Tom and I suggest to Jason as an agenda item,
Yep,
that we bring it up and then we get all of them to one,
I think that's a good idea.
discussion right there.
That's true.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But that doesn't bring in Las Colinas and Novato, so I think still coordinating from the jump. But
Yeah.
that's a very good idea, Mike.
And it kind of ties to the developing issue of how do we coordinate our efforts on I&I reduction, because
Yeah.
I think generally we're all expecting lateral replacement to be a significant part of the I&I reduction effort. So I think that would be a good way to tee it up.
I'll mention it to Jason.
Yeah, okay. So last slide here really is just showing you kind of the future trends or progress on the whole program. As of this fiscal year, we're sitting down here right around just under 4,500 laterals that are in compliance, which is a pretty significant number to start with. And we're suggesting a future target for the agency of 90% compliance on an ongoing basis. Because remember, as you go forward decade after decade, this is something that kind of never stops. You've got properties, laterals coming in, they get used over a certain number of years. At some point, this is an ongoing process. So the first line, the blue, is our current replacement rate. And you can see even after a decade, you're still substantially short of your 90% compliance. If you up that progress a bit by assuming that on average, out of all the paving programs that are going on, you're getting a certain percentage of those properties to upgrade in advance. That nudges you up a little bit more. And then if you layer on top of that, the green, which would be going into the high INI basins and driving, do we have a certain percentage of mine there? Like,
We're going after the high and high basins, so 70% of the basins spread over, of the laterals in the high
In
and
those
high
basins,
basins, which
okay.
is about 5,000 properties and 70%.
okay, so we have about 5,000 properties that are in clearly labeled high INI basins, and that's substantiated by the past flow studies that we've done. And if you are achieving, if you're targeting just those 5,000 laterals over time, over this next 10 years, that's what gives you this final increment. But interestingly, with just those 2 extra trends, which we already know are I mean, one, the paving isn't optional. It's a matter of how well we address it, because it's not a matter of if it happens or not. And the INI, high INI peak basin targeting, when you layer those 2 on, over about a decade, we actually do get to a target of about 90% compliance. And then after that, it would be, of course, again, it's a perpetual. So that's kind of what the future holds. But you can see, I mean, even with the rate that we've achieved, to get to compliance of 90% over the next decade, you're looking at an annual pace of about 900 laterals per year. So that even that would be a bit of an uptick from what we're doing at this point. So that's what we're trying to get to. And I think that is it. So if there's any other questions on this whole topic, we can.
I have one.
Okay.
Are you sure it's 50% on the INI? I've heard and looked at different research, and it's not 50%.
Of the INI coming from lateral?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
much lower. So I just.
It probably
wanted
varies
to
from
bring
system
that
to
up.
system. And I know we have had cost studies at this agency that have come up with that estimate. Do you want to add to that, Catherine?
Yeah, but it's hard to know for sure. You know, we could test and sort of get some measurements and actually show kind of the water loss from ours and theirs, but there's such a range. There's really, the range of results in INI is really big. So some areas have more than others. We may have a higher percentage because we have a lot of bad joints, just given the age of our system. We have a lot of INI joints. But homeowners also have the same leaky joints, so. Lengthwise, it's equivalent lengths. They get more of the fast response when the rain hits. They're not under pavement, falls on the grass, it gets into the lateral quicker. So we could do some estimates, but yeah, there is a really wide range.
Yeah, and
Exactly
also,
what the percentage is not.
talking about runoff is a huge problem because of the topography in Marin County. There's tons of houses on these steep slopes and all of them are built, they're old. You can't run those pipes anywhere else, but off the slopes. So, I mean, I'm willing to consider whatever scenarios you come up with, Greg, but it's challenging. But I just really wanted to get clear on that INI, mostly because when I see those around my neighborhood,
Yeah.
I mean, it's common. And the sump pump thing is, with the recent rain, can you imagine how many more sump pumps were sold this year?
A lot, for a long time.
And they have
yes.
smart ones.
Can we put smart lids around the homeowners group to see, to get
Oh, that'd be
kind
good.
of,
Good idea.
to get a base data for them and then.
For
see-
Creekside?
Yeah, for
I
Creekside.
think we
I guess they
may
have.
The rains are over, but you know.
No, but they're related to
I
tile.
think Greg's right, I think
Yeah.
we've had some smart meters there.
We did flow monitoring on the outlets from that system in the 2013 study. So we have data,
You have some data.
yes, and salinity measures also.
Okay, good.
So we have data.
Yeah, because I think they're sucking salt water.
They have a higher, yes,
Yeah.
and Boardwalk Lawn, and
And
they
it's a high
had some of the high
quality,
notes.
just like all the.
Okay.
All right,
That's it. And
thank
you very
you.
much.
All right,
Item number 13. Consideration of adopting representative to a working committee for updating the CMSA JPA. Everyone in this room knows what those acronyms mean. That's agreement. Also touched on by our lovely LAFCO report. I'm surprised I had so much to say about what should be going on at the CMSA JPA. I guess Greg is leaving that to us. So our job is to appoint one member of this board to be on the working committee with Mary Beth Bushy, Diane Hurst, and Dan Hilmer.
Oh, by the way, yeah, the Larkspur rep for a long time resigned.
Kathy?
Yes.
Is she moving out of the area? Is that
Well,
right?
no, she's just done. She's
Okay.
just done.
And so is Dan the new
He's the new.
permanent? Is he still on their city council?
Yes, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Not know that.
In fact, hers was a very unusual situation. She should have been on the city council. She was on the city council. She left the city council, I don't know if she retired or lost an election, and they left her on sort of like me on Mira.
Well, it wasn't that unusual. There were other non-currently electeds on, I mean, Al Boro was on CMSA for a long time.
He still is.
Oh, I guess last time I was
Been
there,
a while since,
Gary Phillips showed up. and
although
stuff.
I've been to 2 meetings, I've never seen him, so
Gary's been sick.
he's a fan.
Yeah, he's. So my question is for Tom. Tom, would you like to be it?
I would like to.
I also want to make sure, because I know them all, I think they're going to do some good there, but I'm not tied to either way.
It's what?
I know them all, and I think I can do some good on this. I have some thoughts on this too, but, and there's also, there's a benefit to you being on because you're on the CMSA, there's a benefit to you not being on because you're on the CMSA.
Well, also, I don't know whether you know, but Tom helped bring the original JPA 1,000 years ago.
What's that got to do with that?
No, I
What's
can
that
tell
got to
you,
do with it?
He helps write JPAs.
Okay,
well,
well,
tell you,
I'm just giving you my opinion. You asked, I answered the question.
So
Tom, you were
Tom
saying
said you
something?
didn't
Tom,
know
no, Tom was
that-
just about to say something.
well, my approach would be, I think we need to, cement the powers that they have. They came under question when this whole lawsuit, for example. Can the JPA contract, for instance? And I think we need to strengthen the language. We need a strong JPA. And that would be my approach for it.
Well, some of the issues about the JPA come up in this report,
Yeah.
which, by the way, I find interesting. So it brings up the issue of Larkspur,
Right.
which is, to me, crazy, frankly. And, the question is, can we coax Larkspur to a different point of
I
view?
mean, Larkspur shouldn't have a representative
That's right.
on the board.
And
I don't know, I don't think we can force it.
how well do you know Dan?
I have met him a number of times, that's all.
So I know Dan, I know all the rest of the Larkspur Council, that was my thinking, is one of those things, is that, but again, I'm not really that concerned with it. I think the JPA needs to be changed. I like this report. I don't know that we can do everything that's in this report now or in the next 10 years, but there are some common sense ideas in this report that's the next agenda item. And the CMSA joint powers should be strengthened, but it also needs to be changed, I think. And the question is, can we wheedle our way through that? And that's a political issue, that's not a technical writing of JPA issue. That was only, I think,
this is a committee membership
Right.
to both of you, so it isn't my thought that we will be delegating decision-making
That's right.
authority to the member. I would
No.
want, I both don't know how much we're going to be able to move the needle on the way it's currently constructed, but that also it is just to reflect what this board as a whole wants.
I think that's the key point, is that we should report back
Oh, yeah.
and do what the board wants.
I wonder,
I think that the political part of it, probably we need to lobby the board. This is done through the JPA. Lobby the council. That's the only way we're going to get Larkspur off,
right,
is if they decide.
Right, there's no question. Well, and a little tweaking on the other members of the JPA.
Well, I mean, they can't vote them out.
Agreed, I think that's right.
I know they can't,
Which, by the way, seems odd too, but.
Do we have any idea how long a timeframe this working committee is going to be going on for? What's anticipated?
Not, the short answer is no. I don't think that's been established. Certainly at the staff general manager level, we didn't get to that point. We sort of saw that as something for the, once the working committee is convened, a lot of those practical issues about like meeting frequency and, process for keeping the respective boards up to date, some of the things you guys have already touched on, would be established by the, by the working committee once they are
But a
seated.
lot of work has been done on
Right, I mean, the review, the draft review, so to speak, of at the general manager staff level has been done, and that's sort of intended to provide a starting point for the working committee. But, I mean, Mary, again, to your question, as far as sort of process and duration, we actually did not have we hadn't gotten any expectations on that.
And will Jason Dow be staffing this? Will he be intimately involved in this
I
process?
don't, actually, we hadn't talked about that. I mean, how the general managers or the staff support that's provided to the committee. I mean, those conversations, let me be clear, some of these details may have been discussed in the other, forums, that, the other agencies, but to my knowledge, we just haven't gotten to any of those level of details. This is speculative on my part, but I could imagine where maybe at the initial meeting of the committee, the general managers are there as a resource, and the committee can provide direction as to how they want to what degree they want to have staff involvement and support, and we could go from there. So other people may have other ideas, but I don't think we've gotten to that point of detail yet.
And Mary Beth serves on CMSA currently, and Diane serves on CMSA currently, and
Yeah.
Dan serves on CMSA currently.
Well,
So,
Dan does not. He just got put on.
but he will be, right? But he will be.
Well, if you want to really do it, Doug, as long as I can make input, that'd be okay with me. 'Cause I have
I
some-
actually think that's a great idea, because he does have, as town of San Anselmo elected official, he does have like a little political angle, and you have the substance, but I don't think it's clear to me, like, which one should be more important, so as
That's
a,
good. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I trust your expertise in terms of the, the substance of it, but I think this may be a little bit of a political, I mean, it's a
That's
huge
how I see it.
political.
Yeah.
And, I mean, at one point, I thought that the most likely thing was to get a new member for the Larkspur seat who was more into, like, settling lawsuits, and I had made an effort towards that. So it'd be interesting to see how Dan,
Dan's a good guy.
plays into that. But it's my guess also that Larkspur's not just going to say,
No, I don't think they're
we
going to.
rescind that
No.
authority.
Well, isn't it in here somewhere, Greg?
LAFCO is recommending.
Yeah,
And I think that's helpful.
And,
That's helpful.
and
All right.
And Larkspur is also well aware that they're,
Getting
not in a
crowded.
bad way, but that their days are numbered on the CMSA board. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Big kids, less than
It
that.
just, they should be worried about what we're doing, because that affects them. What CMSA is doing affects us, which affects them.
And I think that, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but this
Yeah.
LAFCO report also talks about that, which I think we've all spoken about, which is we're paying 50% in, but we don't have anywhere near 50% of the vote. It's like, seems a little, I think we need to have a little teeth run in the bay here or something. I don't know.
All right, well, thank you, Tom, and I think that's a wonderful solution, and,
If we had good relations with Larkspur over the years, then we would have 50% of the vote.
right,
Good point.
right,
That's a good point, Tom.
right.
Yeah.
All right, may I have a motion to
Yes.
appoint Doug with support from Tom for the,
I'll make a
Or
motion.
with the whole board.
okay?
So what number is that, 14?
13.
I make a motion to, do we make Doug Kelly the representative to be on the working committee for the updating of the CMSA Joint Powers Authority Agreement?
Would one of you two like to second that?
I'll second it, but I don't think we need a motion.
Well, we're gonna say nay.
So I think we did.
I think we do.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Doug, may I hear an aye?
Aye.
Michael, may I hear an aye? All right, thank you very much.
And thank you.
Last item, the discussion and direction on review of the draft LAFCO report. I read the report in more detail than I actually read our letter responding, I realized as I flipped to it just a few moments ago. But do you want to tell us anything about what you think about it, Greg? or
No, I'll give you
just-
just real brief. So everyone is aware of the basics here. So we've known that this study has been in progress for the past almost year and a half, maybe 2 years. The draft, the public draft, has just been issued. It was discussed at the LAFCO board meeting. And the 45-day public review period has started as of the LAFCO meeting was last Thursday, I
Yes.
think, anyway. And so what's occurred so far is staff had already been working with LAFCO to provide feedback on the draft versions of what we call the agency profile chapters. And those are just the individual chapters focused on sort of facts and figures for each district. And so really what's before the board this evening is staff's recommendation is for the board to establish the process that you would like to go through to complete your, in a sense, individual reviews, and then for us to craft those into a single letter response that goes to LAFCO within the 45-day public comment deadline. And so we're not so much looking for, the detailed feedback this evening. It's more to ask the board to establish what you want that process to look like. And it can be as simple as, do your reviews, feed your comments to staff and legal counsel by date X. We then can craft those into some type of a draft letter. You would review that letter at the May board meeting, for example. And then from there, we'd have time to submit that. You could do an ad hoc committee if you'd like to go that route and say, okay, there's 2 board members who sort of work with the other board members to compile that. So it's really, we've done this sort of thing in other documents in the past where it's really the mechanism is getting your individual reviews on LAFCO and compiling those into a comprehensive, coordinated response representing the Ross Valley Sanitary District. As you've already noted, and I think everyone's aware, there are some pretty substantial recommendations, and I don't think there's any doubt that the agency wants to provide a thoughtful and helpful response to LAFCO. That this is touching on some really important long-term issues for the community. So we're looking for that direction this evening.
And so this April 5th letter is yours?
Yeah.
And then we'll draft another
Correct.
one as a board?
Yeah, and I want to de-emphasize, or in a sense maybe put that in context, so that the staff letter was sent, and we tried to make it very clear in the language of the staff letter that it was just that. It was the staff level review of the agency profile chapter only.
Oh, just the agency profile.
Right, and that the Ross Valley Board would be providing its own comprehensive feedback at a separate time following the draft report being issued. So we felt it was important that we get some initial, what I'll call factual and technical issues on the table. But I do want to emphasize that the staff letter, don't pay a ton of attention to it. We only wanted to get some of these things on the record. They're not policy level issues. They're again, more facts and figures. And as LAFCO has already pointed out to us, because there was some rapid last-minute updates to the draft agency profile chapters, we were commenting on one that had, for example, some information on flow levels that they have subsequently updated as what's reflected in the public draft. So don't feel bound in any way by the staff level comments, and again, they were intended to be strictly sort of factual and technical in nature, and not purposely staying away from the many policy level topics that the full report. And to be clear, when I wrote this letter, I didn't have the full report. All I had was
The first 28.
All I had was the draft chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
No, all I had was what was about RVSD
yeah,
specifically.
yeah.
Yeah, which looks like there was enough that seemed kind of off about that. So you were looking for us just for a procedure about how to respond to this collaboratively.
Correct, I think that's it.
What do the board members, what do you think about how you want to respond to this collaboratively? Do we all want to write our thoughts? Do we want to start a collaborative letter on Google Docs or something?
What do we have, Greg, 40, 60 days?
Well, we have till the next.
45.
So whatever we
we have
do,
about
we
30
need to,
days.
we
So
need
we
to finalize it by
have
the
two-
next meeting.
We have about 30 days.
Yeah, our target should be to have a draft for the board to be reviewing at the May regular board.
And do you think, so, I mean, I don't think we should re-comment on what they said about us, I think, about the district. I think we should leave Greg's technical.
Oh, that, yeah, that's fine.
And so, really, I mean, is there anything besides the recommendations?
That's the meat of it.
Okay, which, I mean, I found this, I've never read one of these before,
They're-
but I found it, well, parts of it very poorly written and confusing, because the executive summary has all these
So,
points, and then it goes in a study summary, and then recommendations that are not tied to the study summary in any way, shape, or form.
So-
And
yeah,
I just wonder if there's some code book that I wasn't given.
So what happened,
Yeah.
what I know is that he has written part and Rachel.
Okay.
So there's two writers, and that's why you read it and it's very lofty, and then 2 seconds later, it's very clear and simplistic. And they're underbudgeted, they don't have enough staff, they're on the fly. I mean, I totally agree with you. I got kind of crazy reading it, so I have talked to them 3 times, I think. But I mean, Greg, I really appreciate Greg's feedback, because there's things there that I would never think of. For me, I think we should just throw in whatever we want, and I mean, you can also say comments as a citizen,
Right.
you know. But I think there are some areas that if we just throw in what we want, some people won't want to, some won't, and let staff sort of categorize it or whatever.
We have 60
That's
days,
what
so I think it should be on the
60
next
and 40.
agenda item for us to.
Approve it.
45.
I mean,
Pardon me?
45, but it's already started.
Already started a week
When did the start, when did the clock start?
Last
A week
Thursday.
ago.
So I mean, there's things in here that are, some to me are really important, like the Larkspur change.
And the two smaller
Are we
seats.
gonna sit silent, or are we gonna comment? I mean, there's some things I think for me, I really wanna respond, other things I
Can I, before we get too deep, I'd just like to say, Greg and to the whole staff, I thought this report was really very positive about Ross Valley. And I remember the one line which I sent to you, the level and effectiveness of engagement between agency and customer in Central Marin nonetheless appears expressly highest among Las Colinas and Ross Valley Sanitary District, and demonstrates a direct correlation between board type and responsiveness with favor assigned to an independent agency. So just throughout the report, I think they say nice things about Ross Valley Sanitary. And that's 2014.
But the point is that those are the only 2 boards that are directly elected,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So,
What they're saying is that's why they,
right, I
that's
mean,
why they
that's
respond.
it's a hard sentence to understand that that's what she was saying.
Well, there's that's good.
I was like,
Well, she's also
what
saying,
are you saying?
but she's also
Oh.
saying in the earlier part of the sentence that, but they do respond. So I think that
Right.
the staff is responding better in Las Colinas and Ross Valley than the staff is in the others because they're elected.
That is true.
So I
That
think
is true.
it says
Directly
a lot about
elected
the
for this
staff.
purpose. I agree.
And I see things that throughout this, I read this 3 times, throughout this thing, there's all these little, they're throwing us little nuggets which are very helpful. I mean, when they talk about the consolidation, they don't talk about sending it to Las Colinas, whether it'll ever happen or not, who knows. They talk about Ross Valley being the appropriate agency to take those 2 little tiny guys away. But anyway, I want to put that out there.
Well, so just for the board's consideration, when you look at the range of recommendations from the report, the draft report, you can sort of put them maybe in 3 categories. You can do this a bunch of different ways, but one of them is, some of them are, but also they're really not controversial. So, for example, the Murray Park annexation suggestion and the San Quentin Village annexation, those are topics that have been talked about for 2 decades. And there's been runs at getting that done. Everyone knows, generally speaking, the appropriate thing to do. So that's one that's like, there's a batch of recommendations that are what I'll call pretty straightforward. They're pretty uncontroversial. There's also a batch of recommendations that don't have anything to do with Ross Valley. There's observations about Sand District 2 and Corte Madera in terms of how they manage their finances and so forth. There's things you point out, Doug, about the level of, in a sense, public engagement of the boards, and if you've ever been to a San Rafael Sand District meeting, or you get the point. It's like it's a real small affair, on a Thursday morning at City Hall. So there's a batch of things in here that don't have a lot to do with Ross Valley, and then that third batch is, and there's probably only 2 or 3 of these that. Some of the ones you guys are commenting on, that are really, that they have important political ramifications, they're sensitive topics, they need some very thoughtful consideration if you want them to move forward successfully. And I think if you parse out the recommendations in some fashion like that and decide which ones are really the ones you as a board want to provide a collective voice on, and which ones are sort of like, yeah, that's a good idea, we think we should go ahead and do that. These we're not going to comment on because they're not really relevant to Ross Valley, so why, kind of why muddy the water. But think about some way to kind of structure it in that fashion, and I think you can hone your efforts down to, again, the 2 or 3 that not only are relevant to Ross Valley, but they also have the most potential, they're the most significant looking forward in terms of, issues like governance, things like the Larkspur seat would fall into that category. So that's just a suggestion on my part. You don't have to tackle the whole thing. A lot of what's in that study is like nice to know, but you don't really got to bend yourself into
the last thing we want to do is talk about Corte Madera's finances.
There you go. Couldn't agree more.
I got enough.
By the way, they would not include our independent consolidation financial study because they claim it's not independent.
Right.
But you, as a citizen, can send in whatever you want, and it has to be made public, whatever comments you put in as a citizen.
Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, my comment on the report is that there's a lot of good detail in the report, but the general recommendations are wild. They're very wild, and I was kind of incensed. Here's the first one, analysis. Agencies have a...
What page are you on?
I'm on page 2. And C, analysis. Well, first of all, they got our name wrong, which that annoys me. They call us a county sanitary district. It's never been called that. It's a sanitary district. She's thinking, or whoever did it, of a county sanitation district. So our name, get the name right. But agencies have a substantive influence on growth in Marin County. Now, it's we hate to worry about this with the growth people, the mad and the people that don't want growth, but wastewater agencies have no influence on growth.
We should.
We don't, and we're not a planning agency.
That's right.
And we don't have capacity issues because we size for wet weather flow. That is dead wrong. It shouldn't be in there. You go to the top of the next page.
Well, that would be a good point to argue.
Okay, here's the third bullet. The agency's financial solvency in the long term, I think they're supposed to be it is, constrained by increasing diseconomies of scale. Okay, I've just worked with 3 wastewater agencies in Marin County. They're rated AA, AAA. Now, that's higher than the USA. And right here on page 2, the agency's financial solvency is, they rated them for 25-year bonds. The rating agencies don't agree with that point, and that's their business. That's a general comment. The wastewater demands in Central Marin have been de-intensifying, that's the top of page 3, across the board. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, there were lots of things in this part.
I think they were saying that dry weather flows have been decreasing over the last 5 years.
Because people
Is
use
that what that means?
less water.
I think that's what they're trying to say.
They're letting it develop.
Yeah.
So I think it's incumbent upon us to have an organized response to this. And,
which portions, so I agree, even in the first couple pages, there are a lot of things that make me scratch my head.
General comments, it's a
However-
planner's comment.
Is there anything except the recommendations, which are only these two sides of this page, that we feel makes sense to, I mean, Greg has responded to the way they characterize the district and made points about how that's, you know, how that plays out. But I think you're absolutely right. We could go down these 11 recommendations. Some of them have nothing to do with us.
And general
And then some of them we might
conclusions.
want to weigh in on.
Well, even the general ones, though, I just think they're notions, and there's not a real respect for how sewer agencies work.
Right.
They're notions about how a city might operate.
So which pages do you think we ought to directly respond?
Well, the general, you know, the very beginning there really caught my attention because I could just read some of those. And then there's a summary general conclusions. I think we ought to comment on those. You know, here's one that's a killer. 5.2 recommendations. It's on page 211.
Right.
CMSA should develop a plan to allocate treatment plant capacity among its members. That is a killer.
Yeah.
Agencies have done that before, and it forces a regional agency into separate little compartments,
Right.
and one agency might run out of capacity. And
I think it's
it's not
possible.
Right, I mean, I think,
It's
isn't
not
that,
possible.
if we pay
It
based on our
is
flow, we're
possible,
sort of
agencies have
paying
done it. Saxon did it.
for what we're
And so
using.
did SAM, sewer agency in the coast side, and the fighting started.
Okay.
It's a terrible recommendation.
Well, and I feel like there's a little bit of wagging the dog, like, is it important for LAFCO to say that we have a substantive influence on growth in Marin County in order for them to have jurisdiction over us?
Oh.
Yes, they're a very powerful agency.
But, I mean, you know what I'm saying?
I
Is that how they're shoehorning themselves into,
I think so.
you know, any sort of legal authority over
Well, they're
us?
trying
I mean,
to
you have to, regardless of whether you have land use authority, you have to go to LAFCO to make certain changes. So
Okay.
from that perspective, no, but maybe there's some.
I mean, I feel like that starts their argument, the very first bullet is saying like, no, this is why we should be worried about this. And so that's one. If they say we have to allocate treatment capacity, then they're saying, okay, Ross Valley, RVSD, you only get this much treatment capacity, so we're controlling your growth. And then San Rafael, you only get this treatment capacity, so we're controlling your growth.
So Jason would say he's got room for thousands of new connections in his plan.
Okay.
And he does, it's because it's sized for 30 MGD driveway flow.
Yep, and we're at
And the
7
current
on
flow
regular dry
is
day.
way
We're at 7 on
So,
Friday.
Tom, I want to write up my responses to the things on these recommendations, 2 pages, that I think RVSD should say something directly about. I would suggest, why doesn't anybody else who wants to do that and either get it to Mary Brown by some date that she will set, and then she'll bother us about it for the next couple days.
Which 2 pages are you talking?
211 and 212, because I think these are the only things that are actual recommendations.
Well,
And these are written by Keene presumably, because they are very strict.
I want to go after the general
Now,
conclusions.
without doing anything that we did in the ethics training the other day, if we
Can't talk
send-
amongst ourselves.
but if we send everything to Mary and Mary compiles them, Mary could send that compilation to the whole board, we just can't discuss it.
No, I don't think she can. I think she'd have to bring it up next meeting.
Well, I think what makes sense is for all of you to send your responses into Mary,
Yeah.
and the staff can compile it, and it'll be on your agenda in May.
Yeah, that's.
Okay. And for discussion and any editing and.
Right, because after that,
Yeah,
there
we
won't
can't
be
be
more
working
time.
on it, we can't work on it together sequentially without being in a public.
So each
Yeah,
of
you don't
this,
want to pass it to each other and make.
So I have a
you're
question.
fine, just send it straight.
I have
Just,
a question. Well, I mean, they don't really talk about consolidation straight up.
Mm,
They hint, or as they say on CNN, drip, drip. But, I mean, I think maybe we don't even know if there's a financial advantage or disadvantage. I'll just do that as a public comment. that for me is really critical on why you would consolidate is you just don't do it to do it. It's gotta have some other benefit. I mean, yes.
See, they say there's a financial disincentive going into the future. They make that statement,
Yeah, but that could
and
be,
they don't have anything.
right.
To back it up.
No,
Right.
it's-
Well, and I would say, you know, if you send Mary comments, make sure you're clear about what pages you're commenting on, because I know what I want to focus on, but Tom, you want to focus on some other things.
Well,
Any of us
there's a
might-
section 5, general conclusions. That needs some work.
Well, oh, this,
2-6.
yeah, oh, that section drove me absolutely crazy, which is why I was like, well, so are the recommendations going to flow out of this? And they don't.
This is true.
And it's, I mean, it's,
We could say we agree
Well, by
with
the
some
way,
of the
that-
things too, like Mark's version.
There was also a point where it said growth exceeding earlier estimates. Somewhere it said that, you know, by more than 1/4 previously made by ABAC. I don't think that's right. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think that's right at all. I think ABAC's growth projections were wildly out of line, and then they recompiled them. I think ABAC's growth, I argued that when I was on town council, ABAC's out of their minds with growth. And their numbers have been wrong for years, so I'm not even sure they're right on that one. But the other point about the service areas nearing growth build out, and I'm at 5.2, and what's the point? So,
Well, the point should be that we don't need to, we don't need to do things to plan growth.
we don't plan growth, but more importantly, as you say, if there's growth that's done by the towns to us, we're ready.
Yeah.
So, it's not really relevant.
See, I think that, yeah, my point was, my reading was, gee, they just threw out some general ideas.
well, and
It wasn't how wastewater agencies work.
Right.
They missed the point on it.
I think, yeah.
And I don't want to respond to the general conclusions because it's, I don't think, I mean, it doesn't have any practical impact and they get kind of crazy making.
Why let them say that we have an impact on growth? I mean,
Oh, I don't think we need to set that, I think we make that comment. I agree with you on that comment. I wondered if that they had to, in order to get, you know, some more either real or just perceived jurisdiction over telling us how things should be
maybe
run.
in other areas that have, you know, that don't have a lot of capacity, they have, it's not the situation.
But, yeah, this is really surprising to me, because I thought this was going to be exciting and interesting. And instead, even the recommendations are very sort of narrow and political, and like you said, some of them are like, well, of course, you know, we should annex Murray Park. We should annex San Quentin
Well, that's
Village.
good.
Actually, I found some minutes from 2011, and the same thing was there to annex those two.
A LAFCO minutes?
No, minutes from, we did a special.
Aren't we
board
working
meeting,
on
same thing
annexing
came
Murray
up.
Park? Isn't there?
We've had background discussions on it, you know, going back a couple of years. We set it aside. When this process became apparent that it was going to happen, we, you know, there was staff level discussions with the county. We just decided, you know, the thing to do is to not try to push that. Let's wait for the LAFCO MSR process. So it might provide some, you know, some foundation for, you know, eventual action on it. And to nobody's surprise, the MSR has those recommendations to, you know, to affect those. But I do think, you know, the suggestion well, I think this is what I heard Mary or one of you say, you know, in a sense, you know, if you got to focus on something, focus on the recommendations.
Yeah.
Because the factual background is a kind of a mixed bag. The findings, I think, are things that, as I understand it, they're sort of statutorily required to make, you know, some kind of comment on. But as you, I think, Mary, you pointed out, there isn't necessarily a direct connection between the findings and the recommendations, which you might,
I said
by
it
the
was
wording, you might
judgment.
think that, well, this supports this. But there's so, you know, I think that in terms of what really is substantive and matters going forward, it is the recommendations. Those are the things they're saying, the community ought to go do X. Everything else is a mishmash. It's a mix of facts and in some cases, as you guys are pointing out, what we think might be some somewhat speculative conclusions. but the recommendations is the real meat of the matter. So I think, my suggestion for what it's worth would be, try to focus on the recommendations and in terms of your feedback. So,
So Mary, will you,
Yeah.
you'll set a deadline for us? Thank you.
okay.
Maybe 3 weeks.
We should say, if we want to establish that as 2 weeks from
2 weeks.
today would be the target for feedback from the board to Mary. Okay.
That Mary. All right, thank you. Info items, do we have those agendized specifically now? Okay, verbal reports by board members, staff, and requests for future items on the agenda.
Cap will be.
Any verbal reports by board
I'll
members?
send you the minutes.
Okay.
North Bay
watershed?
I don't think I have any, Mary.
Any staff verbal reports? All right, any requests?
I request an adjournment.
Any sideline?
All right, then we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you, guys.